Okay, we're going to go and start our little chalk talk today with we're going to run two plays. The first one's going to be the 2-point play that Oregon State decided to run, a call that my co-host Mike Salk really didn't like. Going for two, I would say it's not my favorite play, because if I'm Mike Riley and Danny Langsdorff, the offensive coordinator at Oregon State, I want this guy involved, and that was Quiz Rogers on the 2-point play. This isn't schematically anything exotic, but what I want to do today is talk about 3 or 4 of the little details. And we're going to do the same thing on a Seahawk run play. And you'll see, I said during the broadcast, football is a game of inches. It's also a game of many, many details and who can be the most precise. And it truly is a game of inches when it comes down to it. So the Beavers line up in empty. And remember, as we talked about on my radio show yesterday, that Steve Sarkisian was standing right next to Nick Holt. And if they got a look they didn't like or an alignment they didn't like, Sark was going to call a timeout to make sure defensively everybody was on the same page. Now what I want you to notice, many times, remember the 2-point play is from the 3-yard line. And many times when you get down in the red zone, and this is obvious on film, Oregon State knew how Washington was going to line up. And you see many different teams run this kind of alignment. And literally look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those 7 on the back end almost line up in the exact same distance from the line of scrimmage. When you watch it on TV next time, when you get down inside that 5-yard line, this is a defense that a zone defense that many schemes and defensive coordinators employ. They try to protect themselves and cover all of that space. And as I said, you almost see them, a foot on the goal line, almost line up in exactly the same spot from a lateral standpoint. What jumps out to you immediately on this play for Ryan Katz was seeing the 2-on-1 on Jaquiz Rogers. So this was Wheaton outside, and he just cleared out. From a quarterback perspective, you could see they were pretty well dialed in and bracketed. That's about as close as you can come on a football field to a true double team, is when you're able to bracket down there. So Katz sees the 2-on-1, and he knows over here he's got his 3 guys really against 4 defenders. And they're going to run and clear Nichols out, which takes true font. And this is one of the details. This was Bishop, and this is a common route against this kind of scheme, is he runs this route, and you have Halahuni running right here. And as I said yesterday on my radio show, Ryan Katz, and if you watch the replay, you're going to see Mason and Dennison talking to each other, trying to communicate through all of that noise and mayhem at that moment and get on the same page. And literally when the ball snapped, that was about the only time that their heads snapped back at the quarterback, because they were barking at each other, trying to make sure they were on the same page of where each other were going to be. So the snap comes, and because of some of that confusion, I know that Katz was looking that way. He actually stares Dennison down to try to keep him as much as possible here so he can fire that dart there. One of the coaching points and critical, and this is where the details come into play, Mason Foster does just enough in coverage to disrupt this route, and he actually stops the feet of Halahuni. If you watch that replay, instead of getting a clean release and attacking that gap in that space, he chops his feet. Foster influences him just enough that it stops his feet for that split second, and that was the difference that allowed Dennison ultimately to come over and somewhat disrupt that play of ball that Halahuni still can catch. Lastly, pretty good protection. If Katz would have felt that squeeze at all, if Foster would have squeezed a little bit more, then you watch the rest of that film, and it was almost like the Tennessee Titans-St. Louis Super Bowl game where Dyson catches that ball at the 1-yard line. Bishop on this little loop route, break route, whatever you want to call it, was going to be coming wide open. As that distracted and took everybody away, but Katz thought he had a window to throw it. And once again, just the foot fire, just enough of a freeze there, because if he releases freely, he scores. Dennison had too much ground to cover, but by chopping his feet for just an instant to get to that route, it gave Dennison enough time to at least physically influence the reception point.